welcome to Silver Plume. This little town is tucked away in a narrow canyon at a little over 9,000 feet in altitude. It's just a few miles away from its well-preserved neighbor, Georgetown, Colorado. In fact, both towns are part of what's called the Georgetown Silver Plume National Historic District. What we're looking at here is the remnants of what was once a much more significant main street. A lot of the buildings are gone due to fire or collapse over the years, but at one point in time, this city looked a lot like Georgetown that you saw in my previous video. These two cities came up at about the same time, but the initial development of Silver Plume was a little bit slower. It was composed of just a few buildings at first, until the Pelican Mine came in 1869. This was a large mine. It was actually situated near a smaller and competitive mine called the Dive. It was so close that the owners were seen fighting for encroaching on each other's vein of gold. The competitive spirit and rivalry of this town continues to this day, and is an interesting story that I'll get to in a minute. And yes, this is considered a town, although it once housed thousands of people and now houses well under 100. At best guess, I'd say we have 30 to 40 full-time residents here. That being said, the folks I talked to here were great. There's some really great folks that do live here. Actually, one offered for me to buy their house. Unfortunately, I'm not in the market, but I'm not lying. I was tempted. If you happen to find yourself in the area, I highly recommend you stop by Silver Plume. While it doesn't have many amenities, it has so much to marvel at. And this 1800s town is amazing. In fact, here in this photo in 1872, the town, it had blossomed to about 500 residents. It was boasting a thriving commercial district and many modern amenities such as electricity. But disaster struck this town in 1884. When a fire destroyed most of the business district. The damage at the time totaled up to about $100,000, but in today's currency, that would be about $2.8 million. Many lives were lost, and parts of the main street really never fully recovered. But fortunately, the town did continue to grow. And by 1893, it had a little over 2,000 residents. At that time, they had a playhouse, a post office, and a brand new church. And they even coined their first newspaper, the Coloradan. On a quick side note, I found this fascinating. There's this large book here with what looks like book titles on it. And in this building, there was some paper mache on the wall and some interesting numbers on the floor. Unfortunately, I had already talked to everyone I had planned to talk to that day and really didn't get a chance to ask anything about what this building is or was. If you know anything about what this building's currently used for, I'd love to know in the comments section below. Now with that aside, back to its story. Tragedy returned to the town in 1899 in the form of a giant avalanche. The newspaper reported on February 12th that two mighty avalanches combined into one and swept down the Cherokee Gulch, carrying away with it about a dozen mine buildings, cabins, and machinery. Needless to say, this was a great loss in life. The newspaper went on to say that they were able to recover 8 bodies. However, the rest would have to remain until the snow actually thawed in spring. As the town grew into a small city, it began to notice its neighbor, Georgetown, was growing faster and retaining more wealth. This was a sobering and bitter fact for the townfolk because all of the local mines were located in Silver Plume, not Georgetown. Much later, a study by the National Park Service revealed the tangled relationship that these two communities share. What we're looking at here is what was one of the last remaining businesses here in Silver Plume. My wife and I stumbled upon this when we were still engaged, over a decade ago. And it was snowing at the time, and we were new to the area, and it was the only thing open. We had something they called a naughty bar, and it was everything they described. I mean, anything sweet, it was in this bar. Anyway, we were a little shocked to see they weren't open here during what was their posted hours. It looks pretty buttoned up here. Maybe they've turned into a seasonal business, but I hope this is still going and really wish the best to the owners. On the optimistic side, this does look well preserved and like they're going to be back soon and open for business. Maybe we just caught them on an off day. If you do happen to find yourself in Silver Plume, please let us know if you find it open and do stop in. It's amazing. As I understood it on my last visit, this was the oldest continually operating business here in Silver Plume. And the building has been here for generations and has been all kinds of different stores. And, I'm not here to beat up on Silver Plume or, over-endorse Georgetown, but I do want to finish kind of covering the point I mentioned earlier on that National Park Service study, because it honestly is kind of a controversial study in this area, and most of the people here have read it. It came out some time ago, but it went on to basically state that the concentration of wealth was Georgetown, and the concentration of work, or the work center, was Silver Plume. So it caused this divide between the two communities, where one was kind of less permanent and, quite literally, it says in the report, less impressive, which was Silver Plume, and the other was much more impressive and retaining its wealth. As the report concluded, when the ore left Silver Plume, so did its wealth. This is a fact that doesn't escape the community to this day. The working relationship between these two towns has been a source of much resentment. However, really, one town wouldn't have existed without the other. They needed each other. It's what they call a symbiosis. A lot of people speculate that Louis Dupuis, who I talk about on my vlog a little bit and in my previous video, really had a big hand in kind of keeping Silver Plume down and keeping the wealth in Georgetown, his hometown. And part of that's due to the fact that he owned the Coloradan, the local newspaper, and he was really able to kind of shape perception and opinion through that paper. I really feel this town is a true gem and has a lot to offer in terms of history. When you compare old photos to today, not much has changed. It is relatively well preserved. This house is particularly interesting. It looks like somebody actually tried to pick it up and move it at some point on a flatbed trailer, which isn't uncommon to take one of these houses and move it to a museum or an urban center for preservation. As you'll see here in an old photo, here's the outhouse with no house next to it. And so the assumption is this looks like a failed attempt to move a home. Today, there isn't a lot of commerce in Silver Plume, but there's still a whole lot to see and experience. Only a few businesses exist, including a cafe, a boarding house, and a recreational marijuana clearance center. Well, the boarding house has been converted into a hotel of sorts, or a bed and breakfast. The building's originally from 1884. It used to be called the New Windsor Hotel, but now it's just called the Windsor Hotel. I'm not gonna lie though, a lot of people refer to it as the creepy motel or the haunted inn, but honestly, it's really nice inside. I suggest you take a look at their website and see what they have to offer. I've actually put a link to it in the description. The hotel sits in a section of town that is very well preserved and mostly occupied. It's gorgeous, and frankly, 10 years ago, this area didn't look this good. It's great to see that it's coming back. We're beginning to see people come in and, take photos again and take some interest in this town. It does look like they're currently painting it purple, but it has been white for most of its history, as we see here on the New Windsor Hotel. However, today, most people really don't visit here to stay or for the attractions. It's just to marvel at the relics and take in the atmosphere. I strongly recommend you visit Silver Plume, but support any of the institutions that you can. A lot of the people here are the same people that are putting the effort into keeping the town looking great. While about half the town sits in ruin, a good portion of it is well preserved and, for the most part, occupied. And this is the real treat of the town. And it's what you're going to see when you first come into town. And I suggest you do go a little deeper, though, and look at what it has to offer. Hike around the area and see everything there is to see. When I first visited Silver Plume, it did not look like this. Most of the windows were boarded up, the paint was chipping, bricks were crumbling. It was in bad shape, but I'm seeing so many signs of renovation. And even if you visit and don't find a single store open, it's worth it just to support the town and take in the wonders. So if you find yourself heading west on I-70 in Colorado, pay a visit to this town. And as always, thanks for watching, and please do like, comment, and subscribe.